It may look like a harmless bagel toaster, but inside is a deadly donut. How do you know PlayStation is not a normal game system?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Esoterica and our continuing series, PlayStation 1 Paradise, where I take a look at some of my favorite PlayStation 1 games of all time, both in 3D and in 2D, and if you can't tell already, we're talking about R4 Ridge Racer Type 4 today. And I stand by the statement that this is the best racing game on the PlayStation 1, whether it's arcade or simulation type. I know you're going to go down there below and comment, what about Gran Turismo? And while I think that's an absolutely epic series, I am just a huge arcade racing fan if you don't know that by following the channel. And in my honest opinion, R4 does absolutely everything right when it comes to an arcade racing game on the PlayStation 1. Obviously, I've been playing around with this a little bit and I have enhanced it with Duckstation to 16:9 with a ton of upscaling, giving it a much more modern look, which in my opinion brings the game back to life compared to original PlayStation 1 hardware and basically makes it feel like a PlayStation 2 level game. But when I say this game is perfection, I absolutely mean it. There is nothing that Ridge Racer does that I do not love as far as this game is concerned. The handling, the sensation of speed, all of the different courses, everything about this game is just a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. I've been playing this since it originally came out, and I absolutely love the entire Ridge Racer franchise. This was for consoles, this was not a port over to arcade games, and this is honestly I think a better thing for the overall series, because while the PlayStation 1 port of the original arcade Ridge Racer is an awesome experience, the arcade version is definitely the better one to play, and it is not a very big game as far as modes are concerned. When you get to something like R4 though, this game really feels like a console exclusive, and that's because it was. This was designed for the home market, and there is so much to do. But right off the top, what I love about this game so much is the sheer sensation of speed you carry through it, especially when you're in the first person or cockpit mode, drifting around the corners, weaving in and out of your opponent's traffic, and trying to get that checkered flag all has this amazing sensation of actually racing, or as close as you can get to it with a PlayStation 1 analog controller in your hand. The drifting in this game just hits that sweet spot. It is easy to learn how to drift, but understanding every single turn on the course and navigating them effectively does take a lot of practice. But when you pick a clean racing line, when you drift around every corner, when you don't hit any walls, you feel like you're invincible and nobody can stop you. Inversely, when you do hit a wall, it's because you made a mistake in your racing line, not because the game was fighting you over the controls. This is one of those games where the controls just feel perfect, and if you make a mistake, it's on you. You need to get better, and you can't yell at the game for it. But as we go through this downtown, just in this first-person view, I just love the entire look of this game. Whether we're in-game or in the menu, this game has so much flair, so many vibes, and so many awesome colors that they've chosen. It really just does have an overall theming going on of this bright vibrancy with these primary colors. But I love that our crew chief talks absolute crap about us when we start competing for his team, not forgetting the fact that we just won the first race, but he still says we're a terrible driver. If you don't do so well, it kind of makes sense, but if you do win the first race, totally it's so weird, but I absolutely love it. And as we move on to the next race here as well, I just love the overall colorscape of R4. These bright skies, that kind of salmon pink in the background with all of the tracks. This I think might be one of the visually most impressive games on the PlayStation 1 out of any genre. But again, it is a racing game and we have to judge it based upon its mechanics alone, but the track layout is such a big component as well. Every single course in this game is just perfection. Sure, some courses do borrow little bits from other courses, but they always feel new and unique. You switch from daytime to this golden hour right here over to a straight nighttime vibe, and everything just clicks when you're looking at it. When you go into the shadow, your car darkens up, and when you come out into the sunlight here, look at the color on the car and you can just see that pseudo real-time lighting effect come over the body of the vehicle. It's such an effective looking game, and you marry that with the completely perfect driving mechanics and the drifting around the corners, and I really have nothing to say about this game that I don't think could be improved. And honestly, this might be my favorite Ridge Racer game of all time. It was one of those things, every single console had its racing franchise. The Sega Saturn had Daytona and Sega Rally, PlayStation 1 had Ridge Racer, Nintendo 64 had Mario Kart. Everyone had a racing game that they were competing to take the top spot with. And I do think this game is perfection, including the soundtrack. Listen and I'll be right back. Just an absolutely spectacular soundtrack, and every single Ridge Racer game through the arcades and PlayStation 1 era had that amazing soundtrack. You couldn't go wrong with any of the music that Namco developed for this game. And I do love the progression system in this game as well. You get a chance to just pick a few cars at the beginning, but as you get through the circuits and win some more races, you get to either upgrade your car with top speed, or you get a completely different car as well. But the interesting thing about R4 is just the fact that I think it's actually doing a better job of being a racing game than Sega's own racing games on the Sega Saturn. Now don't get me wrong, if you give me Model 2 hardware, I might say something completely different, because I do think that Sega's Model 2 arcade racing games are sheer perfection as well, but when it comes to console arcade racing games, I think this game tops anything else on any other console of its generation. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me what your favorite racing game from the PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, and Nintendo 64 era would be. I would be genuinely curious. But I just love how realistic this game is. Something like Daytona USA definitely amplifies the visuals on the outside of the track, but here we're basically just racing through this industrial era. We have all of these ships and cargo containers to the left and right, all of these cranes. This does really feel like a place that a race could take place in, and I really do appreciate that for this game. It hews so close to life, you see the birds flying in the air, there's just enough on the edges of the track to make you want to look, but then you realize you really need to pay attention to what's in front of you, or else you're going to just drive completely into a wall. Even these tunnels here that are visually not that interesting because it's just a tunnel have these lighting effects, and it just works. You will see there that I drifted into the wall and I did make a mistake. It has been a couple months since I played this game, and the best part about a game like this one is that it does take a lot of practice with your vehicles, with the courses, to really nail down your driving line. And if this doesn't look familiar, this is one of those instances where I do say that it does slightly reuse sections of previous tracks. You'll know them when you see them, but the track is mostly comprised of different areas, so it doesn't feel too stale or old, but I totally get them recycling just a little bit. But again, when you go into the cockpit view, this is when I think the game really livens up. The sensation of speed is just that much better, and when you drift around the corners and your camera turns, it does have a good vibe. You'll see there I made a slight racing line mistake, and I lost position from second to third. You get punished when you make a mistake in this game. Bump a wall with an opponent near you and they're totally going to take that spot back, and you go from being in first or second place to third or fourth that quickly. But you do realize that it is your mistake, you made it, and you need to correct yourself, because again there I bumped another wall and I lost that distance. But if I get just a few clean racing lines in, I can just pop ahead here, and I could have taken first, but I end up back in second place. Still good enough to compete, still good enough to move on to the next race in the circuit, but every single time I don't get the checkered flag, I do get upset about it. And you will see here that we finished just a couple different races. We do get that new vehicle, and I love how much detail is in this game. They just could have put up a sign saying, you got a new car, and moved you right to it, but you get this tractor trailer truck that takes your new vehicle off and gives you this presentation of how it looks. It's the small touches that make this game really feel like Namco put every single last ounce of energy and love into it. There is not an inch of the screen, an inch of the menu, or otherwise that doesn't have so much care and attention to detail jammed into it. You can tell they love this game, and that's why I love it so much as well. But honestly, even with Pac-Man over there in the corner, the detail is just wild. But I'm going to give you one more listen to the soundtrack. I love it. It's spectacular. Be right back. I even love the announcer. It's complete cheese, but it works for the game. And as we get into one last race here, this is why I've loved this game so much. Every single component of it adds to the overall experience, and there is nothing I would improve. The handling, the drifting mechanics, the overall feel of every single car feels spot on. It is that arcade racing physics that you know and love, but if you do want something like Gran Turismo, this game doesn't really hit that itch as much. But that's why I enjoy this more than Gran Turismo, because I'm way more on the arcade racing side of things. Visually, whether you use Duckstation and blow it up like I did here, or if you use original hardware, this still is one of the best looking games on the PlayStation 1 in my opinion. Add to that incredibly detailed tracks that have so many twists and turns and are laid out so well that you can't help but love them, and the overall color vibrancy and vibe that Ridge Racer brings in the R4 revision, and it just 100% does it for me. I remember the first day I played this game on my old Sony CRT in my bedroom as a kid, and it is as good if not better today than it was back then. This is the type of game that I come back to maybe once a year to get a couple of laps in. Maybe I don't complete the entire circuit, maybe I don't play for 6-8 hours, but every like 8 to 12 months I start getting the itch to play some more Ridge Racer, and this is the game I go towards. I do really think that this is the best arcade racing game on any console of its generation, but of course tell me down below what you think. I'll be back next week with our PlayStation 1 and I'll have videos out the week, but we are done. Bye bye.